Wow, hello, welcome everybody. It's so rare to get so many exhibit people together in one room, so I'm really excited. Can you hear me okay? Great. So I know that the Warriors are playing tonight. So I totally appreciate you all being here, because I feel slightly distracted. I have no idea what the score is, but maybe if it's good news, somebody can tell us at some point in the evening. But I'm really grateful for you all being here, because I know you could be elsewhere, so I really appreciate your time and attention. My name is Fran Osborne. I'm an independent curator and designer. I've been on the board of Cultural Connections for a while, and it's a really cool organization if you have anything to do with museums or exhibitions. First of all, I'd like to thank Mark Sabatino, who's over here, from Gizmo for hosting us in this amazing shop. So thank you very much, Mark, it's really cool. There'll be an opportunity, I hope, to do a little tour at the end of the formal part of the program, so hang around for that if you want to do that. Before I begin, there's a few housekeeping things I have to do. I think the restrooms are
some signs
down there.
Turn left, you'll see it there, go that way.
We've also put evaluation forms on the benches and chairs and cards for you to write your questions on. So we'll do a kind of curated Q&A rather than a sort of free-for-all. So somebody will collect the cards at some point and we'll do a Q&A at the end. There's also a really important thing to mention, which is the material that you see around you and some of the structures are all subject to a really serious NDA agreement. So we ask that you don't photograph or video anything and post anything on social media. It's pretty serious. We do record our programs, so they'll be uploaded to the website at some point, but it's usually just the presenters.
You can take pictures of each other. Please post the event. Just, don't go up to that sculpture and take a picture of it and put it online. That's really what we're after. Just like, this is people's work that they're waiting to present. So if you're respectful of that, you take pictures of the shop or tools or each other, like I say, or me. But, it's just that kind of stuff. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So first of all, can we have a show of hands for people who have never been to a Cultural Connections event before? Wow, welcome. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope you come to more events. We'll have a bit of a break over the summer, but then we'll start it up again in the fall. And we usually have a program every couple of months, so I'm sure you'll get emails about it. Just give you a little bit of background about Cultural Connections before we dive in. It's a community of Bay Area museum professionals who meet regularly to exchange ideas, share resources, and inspire creativity and action. It started in 1977, and members represent museums, zoos, aquariums, parks, historical organizations, nature centers, consultants, and companies. And our goal is to respond to the needs of the Bay Area museum field and being committed to providing relevant and effective programs and services. We believe in diversity, pushing boundaries, being responsive, and of course, continuing professional development. So we're here to talk about exhibitions, and it's really interesting that we've got such a great crowd, because I know people are really enthusiastic about exhibitions. And I always try and see shows whenever I travel. So as a mini icebreaker, and I know you've already been talking to each other, but turn to the person next to you and just briefly talk about an exhibition that you've seen recently that blew you away. And we'll just do that for like 30 seconds to a minute, and then we'll carry on. So just to get the conversation started about exhibitions and museums. set up now? I know we could talk about it for hours, but we kind of have to move on with the program. Thank you. So I know that if you've ever worked on an exhibition, you can never also see them as an ordinary visitor anymore. And I just also want to show of hands to see who looks at how things are hung on the wall, who looks at the lighting. Yeah, so it's a really interesting thing. So as far as the whole business of creating exhibitions goes, there are some really great things happening, and particularly in the Bay Area. But I'm sure you'd all agree there's still a long way to go in order to keep audiences engaged in the future. And the field is getting much more complicated and also more interesting, from the diversity of the team creating them, to the audiences being reached, to co-creation with communities, and also how programming will be woven in. There are more traveling exhibits and pop-up shows and shows in unconventional spaces, in public spaces. For art and history museums, there are opportunities to create exhibitions with an activist lens and more awareness around embedding social justice in their work. For science centres and parks, aquariums and zoos, there's the challenge of solid facts versus beliefs and sensitive questions around conservation. On top of that, we have pressing environmental concerns and an ever-developing technological sector that demands more and more dynamic elements. How on earth can we all keep up with this? Some of our previous programs have addressed a few of these challenges, but it's been a while since we engaged with real live exhibit developers and production firms. We're very lucky to have a wealth of expertise and experience here with us in the room tonight. The presentations will give you a kind of snapshot of what's happening to some degree in the Bay Area. We're going to begin with Louisa Bouquier. I never know how to pronounce people's names. She's an exhibit designer and developer from the Micromuseum.000, which is a fleet of foot-tall museums created by a small team of scientists, designers, and engineers, as well as storytellers. She'll be talking about designing for unsuspecting audiences and how to engage visitors in public spaces. Then we have Maria Mortati, who is a museum experience designer and also a board member of Cultural Connections. And she'll talk about her work as an independent consultant, creating projects from small to large. We will follow that with Ron Davis, who is a principal and lead designer from Gyroscope, and he'll talk about the process and best practices for developing large-scale projects, including those wonderful learning experiences called surprises. And finally, Mark Sabatino, who's the president and founder of Gizmo, will share their approach to working with clients and developing, fabricating, and installing some of the unique projects they've co-created. Again, we'll have a Q&A at the end, so write your questions down and we'll collect them. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Louisa. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Louisa Bouquet. I'm a designer and engineer at lots of different scales. I originally studied architecture. Undergraduate, straight out of school, I worked in construction management, but I did some product design, and somewhere along the way I got a master's in engineering. But my favorite projects have always been designing in public spaces for public engagement. So my current role is head of product at Micro, which is a company that designs and builds a fleet of small science museums that we then install in high-impact public spaces. And I'm going to spend most of the presentation talking about who we are and what we do. What drew me into Micro, though, was this opportunity to engage unsuspecting public in meaningful ideas. So by creating an interaction in public space, we're reaching out to new audiences with our museums and expanding their opportunities for science learning. And so our museums are helping people rethink what public spaces are actually used for. So a bit more about Micro. This is one of our museums here. So our small science museums are 2 feet wide, 2 feet deep, and 6 feet tall. They're about the size of a refrigerator. We work through the museum design and then we replicate it multiple times so we can take the same content and share it across different places. This allows us to reach many different audiences by bringing the museums out into the public. to the transit hubs, the hospitals, and the community centers where people are already spending their time. Since our public launch in late 2017, we've reached 150,000 visitors with our installations. We've installed our museums in a range of venues, including Brooklyn Public Library, Lower East Side Girls Club, the Lincoln Public Hospital in the Bronx, and Rockefeller Center. We're going to actually return to Rockefeller Center this fall when we publicly launch our second museum design, which is called the Perpetual Motion Museum, and I'll tell you more about that later on in the presentation. So museums tend to cluster in wealthy neighborhoods. In New York City, where Micro is based, the borough of Manhattan has 85 museums, and the Bronx has 8, but the boroughs have the same population. The difference is income. Museums are really expensive. A family of 4 going to the Exploratorium here in San Francisco will cost $100, and micro museums are never behind a paywall. They're always free to visit. Museums, especially science museums, already attract educated people. A recent study of visitors to the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History reported that 42% of visitors held a graduate or professional degree, and only 9% marked high school as their highest degree. So our museums are different because our audiences are different. They're not choosing to go to a museum, they're happening upon them. So visiting and learning isn't their goal for this interaction, and our job as designers is to draw in that audience and welcome it, sending them indicators in lots of small ways that yes, this is a science museum, and yes, it's for them. Right now we have 2 museum designs. On the left is our smallest mollusk museum. It's Micro's Natural History Museum. It uses our slimy sidekicks of the mollusks to explore 650 million years of life on Earth. It includes 15 exhibits, 2 miniature movie theaters, the world's first 3D printed octopus brain, and a bucket of slime. The Perpetual Motion Museum on the right is Micro's Physics and Engineering Museum. It explores humanity's age-old quest to understand and harness energy. Taking visitors on a journey through energy systems, the museum explains why perpetual motion is impossible through exhibits that include spinning machines, animations, and an infrared camera display. So how do we draw in visitors through our design? To start with, in the base of each of the museums, we have what we call our hero exhibit, which is a hook to attract audiences. In our mollusk museum, that's a holographic aquarium, which shows a rotating performance of 3-dimensional octopuses, nudibranchs, and the nautilus that you see here. In the Perpetual Motion Museum, our hero exhibit is a 3D printed zoetrope, showing the flow of energy from a plant into a light source. The 22-inch disc that you see in the base here is a 3D printed sculpture that contains 20 still frames of an animation radially arranged. So when the disc is spinning and lit with strobe light, it tricks our brains into seeing motion, and the animation comes to life. This is a little video that shows that animation. The music isn't working, sorry. She said the sound on this one was a little different from all the others. It's just a little doop, 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 doop. But yeah, so we basically took that animated video and separated it into 20 still frames and printed them along a disc to create the zoetrope. This was one of actually the trickier design challenges we had, because aside from the warpage issues we faced when printing the 3D disc that's very large, flat surface, it wants to pringle. When we initially started putting it in front of the public, it was very uncomfortable to look at because of the strobe effect. So when we were gathering feedback from visitors, they said they loved it, but they needed to, my favorite quote was, "It hurts my eyes, but I can't look away." So we needed to somehow minimize that sort of nauseating effect that you get when you stare at a strobe for a while. And our solution was actually pretty low tech. We painted all the surfaces beside the 3D print itself gray, and we made sure to block the light of the LED on all the edges so that it only focused straight down, so that the strobe was only on the disc and none of it was bouncing out into our visitors' eyes. So we also want our museums to feel inviting from afar and to draw visitors in just by their physical presence. So we leave a lot of negative space on our designs to keep them feeling clean and that sort of museum-y feeling. We try and fit a lot of information into a really small space, but we work really hard to cull and edit that information so the additional learning doesn't come at the expense of a cluttered or overly busy look. We have very, very little room for words, so we need to get lots of information across in a very small space. For any content creators, each of these museums only has about 1,500 words on it. Our head of content, who's sitting over there, calls this science haiku. Our museums are mostly made of corian. The shell of it is all corian, which is a solid surface material that contains natural stone dust. So when it's properly lit, the material has a glow to it, sort of like marble will if it's lit. And we carefully design the lighting to have that warm, inviting feel, to encourage visitors to lean in and look closer. These are some close-ups of the exhibits on the Mollusk Museum. So we also spend a lot of time thinking about how to present our content. Lots of people consider science not for them, and our goal is to attract and engage those people, to show them how exciting and wondrous science knowledge is, and that it isn't just the realm of PhDs locked in labs at big universities. Our team includes a film producer, an ecologist, a fiction writer, and so at its nature, it's very interdisciplinary. We all approach design and science knowledge from different backgrounds and different experiences. We also make sure to collaborate with scientists across different fields. For the Perpetual Motion Museum, we got feedback from both astrophysicists and engineers. Each of them has a very deep knowledge of the topic, but they approach it in incredibly different ways. We engage our audience by anchoring our content in narrative and telling stories around facts to capture and hold visitors' attentions. We carefully choose language that's accessible. We don't use terms that we can't define, and we avoid large numbers or scientific notation that can't be understood or comprehended. We also use the idea of embodiment regularly in our designs to anchor concepts firmly in our visitors' physical selves. We address them as you and ask them direct questions. In our Mollusk Museum, we have a senses exhibit. It's up here on the right side in the corner, which relates the way certain mollusks feel, taste, or see the world back to a human body, complete with a miniature sculpture garden of humans that appended with the sensory organs that a chitin, a snail, or a squid might have. So the figure lying down has a whole bunch of tongues on it, as if it tasted every single surface it encountered the way a snail does. In our Perpetual Motion Museum, we use embodiment in the form of an IR camera display so that visitors can physically see the heat that their body is losing at all times. And finally, we use humor to engage with our audiences and signal that this museum is for them because they're included in that joke. So by grabbing and engaging diverse and unsuspecting audiences, we're hoping to expand both access to science museums and also people's understandings of how and when they get to learn. Our next project, which I'm currently spending a lot of my time on, is a modular museum shell design that we can use to collaborate with outside content developers and clients and apply their content to our form factor. This poses the challenge of designing a modular system that can be adapted to a wide range of content, but it unlocks many more opportunities to create faster design cycles and more museums, which will in turn allow us to take this learning platform we've created and bring it to many more places.
Hi, I'm Maria. I am an exhibit designer, museum experience designer. I have worked in museums for a while. I have a background in interaction design. I do projects as an artist. I also teach in the graduate interaction design program here at California College of the Arts with a focus on public interactives. I am going to talk about two projects. I'm not going to talk about small to large. Changed it. I'm going to talk about two projects that are talking about how to make change in museums sustainable. Not green sustainable, but how do we want to have content or experiences that can change without having to reinvent the wheel. Two very different contexts. So the first, hang on a second. All right. The first project is at the Baltimore Museum of Art. They were building a new contemporary art wing, and the education department had secured a gallery space adjacent to the new contemporary art galleries. And instead of, they wanted to bring education out of the classroom and into the gallery spaces. And they wanted to think about, because contemporary art is so difficult for a lot of visitors, how could they kind of threshold people into contemporary art, give them some orientation to make it a little less foreign or unfriendly for them. And so we started down a path of where I first spent some time, this is the space, where I spent some time evaluating the space for interactivity, ADA accessibility, et cetera, et cetera. And our first idea was that we were going to take a work of art that they had that wasn't going to be on view in the main gallery, but the artist's work was going to be, other works would be in the main gallery. This is a piece called Untitled 67, I think, by the artist Mel Bachner. Mel is still alive. He is a conceptual artist. He does a lot of work with perception, and also he does a lot of work with lettering and contemporary ideas. So we had this piece, and we set about thinking about the different ways we could make this accessible to people and play with this in different didactic ways, and a way so that very little children could kind of access it, as well as older people and groups. And so we were going to have a suite of different types of things in the space. And one of the things I was playing with was, this is abstract art. How could you get people into the mindset of this person without having them have to learn what that person learns? Like, they would have access to some of that research materials, but in more of an open-ended way. And so I started playing with different ways to break down the painting, to think about how could we slow people down. You know, drawing is a really great way to get people to play. You have to seed activities actually for them to feel comfortable drawing, so on and so forth. So we got pretty far with this as one aspect of the space, with a bunch of aspects of the space, but then Mel Bachner heard that there was going to be a video in a space adjacent to his work of art. So this is nothing, he didn't know anything about anything else. And he said, absolutely not, you can only have my work in a space and a wall tag and nothing else. So we had 4 months, I think, to opening at that point, so we really had to scramble. So what we started to think about was, well, what if we took an idea that's across the gallery in contemporary art rather than focusing on one piece of art, and so that's something that people would experience over and over again and give people some kind of mental adeptness with this idea. And then started thinking about, like, how could this space become sustainable for the museum? Because if we're doing one whole space redo around one idea with custom interactives, that's going to be really hard to repeat over time. So we came up with this idea for a platform, basically, where we worked out all the, I in advance sort of worked out, okay, here's where all the activity can happen due to accessibility and the nature of the space. And then what if we started to take some of these ideas and work with outside partners and affinity groups to help kind of animate the space? I'd seen this Murakami wallpaper at the Walker Art Center that created this very wonderful immersive feeling. And so I took that idea and worked with a local graphic design firm called Post Typography in Baltimore to create, to play with the idea that we decided text as image was going to be the idea that we played with, because you see that Robert Kruger, Mel Bachner, Andy Warhol, so on and so forth. So we, working with Post Typography, we created this immersive space where this idea of, they turned it into words as pictures, pictures as words, and then they started to play with that around the space and the different ways that contemporary artists interpret type. And then we had activities that could be changing out over time, and they could have public events with different community members. So I have a little video here.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't know about I know what I like when you first started. I will do all things like this, but the part that I don't understand, I know.
Okay, so then the other project It's a very different beast. It's in central London. The University College London had dozens of different labs all around the city for neurosciences, and Lord Sainsbury and the Wellcome folks got together and created this massive block-long building for the study of neurosciences. And they had it, the street front. They had a street front that they wanted the public to be able to have a sense of what was going on inside the building, even though everything was kind of top secret. So they reached out to Marty Banks, head of the Banks Lab in Visual Perception and Cognitive Function at Berkeley, and Hani Farid at Dartmouth, a computer scientist, to provide the content. And then I worked with them to develop an exhibition. So the nature of the site, this was obviously during construction, was that you had people that were coming down the street under this colonnade, and we wanted to be able to engage passersby that were going to be here very, very near, and then also very far from across the street. You had to kind of offer something to everybody. I spent some time working out like different kind of electronics and touch-based interactives, things that you could sense through the glass, or using different types of motion detectors, and so on. However, the glass is very, very thick. And then the fact that the people that are doing the maintenance on the exterior of the building are not going to be able to kind of mess with the vitrines, the front of these vitrines, these massive 13-foot by 9-foot size vitrines. Around this exhibition. So I started to think about, okay, what is the thing that is going to be sustainable? Because no one is going to be able to come down from up in the offices in the building and come down and like check on exhibits and make sure the electronics are working. So being that it's visual perception, the idea was that we'll work with people whose bodies, oh, you can probably hit that, I don't know what that is. So, as you probably experienced at the Exploratorium and places like that, like we work with the fact that people can move and they can provide the interaction. The exhibit doesn't necessarily have to provide the interaction, and also the fact that the site would allow for people to kind of move far and back pretty easily. Also worked pretty well for them. So I have just a quick video here. I should say that we were contracted to give them an exhibit that would stay up for 9 months to a year. And it's been up for several years now, so I can check on it through Google Street View. We did have some exhibits that were mechanical, which we cycle tested pretty extensively, of course. So again, when you're doing these types of projects, sort of figuring out not just the logistics of the building site, but making the content kind of work for you, or the phenomena kind of work for you. The other thing I will say was an extremely complex project, very difficult site to work with. And so everyone had to go through all kinds of incredible security and briefings every single day. So having great relationships with all the people on the job site, finding out who is the person that has the keys essentially is I can't underscore that enough, will be the people that will watch out for your project and make sure it doesn't get destroyed during the rest of construction. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Can you hear? Let's try this. How about now? Can you hear me? All right, good. All right, so Maria said, how are you going to cover all this stuff in 10 minutes? So, let's see how we do. So I felt I needed to come up with a title somehow for all of the stuff I'm going to show, calling it Persistence of Vision. And it has really nothing exactly to do with this, but it's, I'm going to show you one project that Gyroscope's worked on. We're going to talk about it. But what I wanted to share was this idea that where we started almost 6 years ago, through this very circuitous route we're going to race through over our 8 to 10 minutes, we have maintained, and I hope you will agree, consistently achieving the vision that we started with all those years ago through the windy path that we took. So that is the idea, that we're going to show lots of images. They're going to add up to hopefully something in motion at the end. All right, so this is the Explore and More Children's Museum in Buffalo, New York. I'm calling it a quick case study in resilient design. And my name is Ron Davis. I'm from Buffalo. So how exciting is that to work on a project in my hometown of Buffalo? Of course, these projects are complicated. They take many partners and players and people and collaborators, and I wanted to share our team at Gyroscope, some of whom are here today, many of whom had some hand in the project over time. In the lower left is Noah, who used to work here, so that's the small community we live in. And then Tasha's here. Tasha, you can wave your hand. And then Louise, you can wave your hand. So Louise and I basically, for the last 3 years, saw this project through completion. You'll see a lot of our sweat and heavy pixel pushing. And then at the end, you'll see Louise's baby daughter. So that's exciting. All right, so just Gyroscope, if you don't know, we are a full-service museum design, planning, and architecture team. That's pretty much all we do, our museum experiences. And we have very exciting jobs, and you will see an example of one of those projects. Explore and More. Oh, well, yes, I want to say this is a good diagram we share with a lot of our clients about how complex the projects that we are all beginning on the long journey together are, that everything, we start with everything, and all these components are all part of what we think about in planning the projects, from partners to size, to architecture, to mission, vision donors. All these pieces are constantly in play. And we like to show this diagram of the classic, this is like the classic Newtonian phases of a project. You've got schematic design, design development, construction, documentation, fabricators, construction administration, opening. It all seems very like you just march down the road. And in case anyone really has not experienced the truth of that, the reality is the project is all over the place. Oh my God, what can happen? What, a new executive director? Holy Toledo, what, the building? We've got, oh my God, the new, oh no, another new executive director? Architecture, value engineering. Okay, but nonetheless, these projects happen, and that is the persistence that we'll demonstrate. So this is sort of a mad dash through the project, some background on what it is and the planning and so forth. The project is a complete reimagining of a existing children's museum. It was about, what did I say, 6,000 square feet in a suburb of Buffalo called East Aurora. And they were selected to be the cultural institution to anchor a new waterfront redevelopment at Canalside. Canalside is the historic terminus of the Erie Canal, which had been paved over and plowed over in the way that lots of urban developments had happened, and industrial development and so forth. Buffalo, being one of the last Rust Belt cities to redevelop, particularly its waterfront, left a lot of stuff there. They uncovered this footprint of the Erie Canal, and they've built a whole new project there, of which Explore and More is one of the first projects to be built there. So it's a complicated site. This picture doesn't quite show exactly how complicated, but there's a freeway that goes over it. But basically, there's a master plan to redevelop the site and to focus on the history of the Erie Canal. So we were hired in, I think we took the first call in 2013, something like that, some number of years ago, almost 6 years ago. I answered the phone, they said, we're doing a museum and we're from Buffalo. I said, I'm from Buffalo. It seemed good, propitious. We got the job. We developed a master plan, and the master plan. We created some vision for what this place could be. We developed the themes and the zones and this conceptual framework, Exploring Buffalo and More. There were these 9-ish zones that were described, of which 8 of them remain today and were completed. Schematic design, all sorts of visualizations of the project, lots and lots of pages and drawings and meetings every week for quite some number of time to create a vision for the building and a way to create all these experiences within the building. So we're moving down that what seemed like a linear path, and then we were thrown the first curveball, and the developer decided that the site we had designed for, the building we had designed lovingly every corner into, was not the right building for us, and it was not going to work for them economically, even though they were contributing to the project. And they said, basically, you can't have that building, but we'll let you have another building more or less across the street. And so it fell on us to take all of these pieces of the puzzle and move them from here to there. And of course, anybody who's designed anything knows it's very specific to design into a building. And so we were given the task and the job to take all those pieces and to reimagine them in that footprint. So everything we had done, which was not insubstantial, got to be reimagined and fit into that space. And so these are all the gallery zones, and it's sort of funny to see them in this way. But it was kind of like taking a pile of a dollhouse and dumping it out, and then having to rebuild it in this new space. So just one of the pluses of all that, or the challenges that we took on, Louise and I in particular, was to take the design that existed in 3D in our old software and rebuild everything we had ever built in the new software and put it in the new building, thinking that would be a good learning experience, which it was. I don't think I've had that many dinners at work in some time, but everything got rebuilt, refit in the new building, and off we go. A whole new set of drawings has been produced into the new building, and then visualized into the new building. Every piece and every parcel of it visualized, rendered lovingly, and we convinced ourselves, we convinced the client, we convinced a fabricator to join us, and off we go. So the fabricator, who was Art Guild outside of Philadelphia, they're a big fabricator. I've worked with them once before on a project with Maria. Anyways, Maria. They did a fantastic job. We were very lucky to have them on this project. And they took all of our designs and applied their years of experience to craft all of this stuff, working quite well together, prototyping and developing all these pieces. They reinvented both the water wheel and the Archimedes screw. Thousands of year old technology, but it was reinvented for this project to be more efficient in ways which no one had yet to devise. Okay, 2 minutes. All right, so on we go, more prototyping, their incredible shop. We're on to the construction, the building's being built. There are many... It sounds like that in a museum, really loud. No, that was really loud. Okay, so the pieces go into the museum. There are all sorts of tales to tell along the way, but basically almost every gallery, after it's designed, after the shop drawings were made, even while some of the pieces were made, because of architectural anomalies, what would we call it, almost every gallery had to be redesigned and repositioned into the building, including this giant waterfall, of which is now positioned in there. And we're just going to race ahead here fairly quickly. But this is a great view of what it takes to get all this stuff in there, to get it built, to get it working. And then here we are, Louise and I were there a month ago. It seems like a month ago. All of the incredible work that's come now to fruition here at the soft opening, and it is quite amazing that it works. And we have here, Daisy, Louise's daughter, our test subject. This is a great view of the complexity and the kind of looks like simple power of this waterfall as we get to the finished exhibits. And so, in a kind of rapid summary here, persistence of vision, we had an idea of what this thing would look like with many iterations before this one, but we agreed we wanted to look like this. We visualized it in the 3D world and created what we hoped was the best sense of what it was to convince ourselves and our clients of the project. And then, lo and behold, it gets built, which is all very gratifying. The big ribbon cutting happens with all the mucky mucks. The donors, who was very fun, had a nice bicycle ride with her after the event, and the director of the museum. And then ultimately, we get to, where are we going to go? Maybe we're not going to go. Something's going to happen. What's happening? Is that the end of my show? No, there must be. All right, here we go. So, our test subject once again experiencing the joys of the project. I think we did have some audio for that. That's not as loud. We got it? Maybe not. Anyways, that was very satisfying to see. And then, in conclusion, the waitress at the hotel who found out what we were doing wrote this note and gave it to me in the hotel room. And I'm telling you, that was very touching for the community of Buffalo, New York. All right, so thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Mark Sabatino with Gizmo Production. Nice to see everyone. Let's hear it. That's my icebreaker. First I want to thank Cultural Connections for choosing us to host this event. I've been in and out of that organization for about 20 years now, and I've seen nothing but great programming from them, and so to be included in that's an honor. And it's also great to see new faces. I know a lot of people here, but a lot of you have never met before, and I hope we get to talk afterwards. This is a fabrication facility, and funny enough, we've done, not funny enough, but we've done a bunch of projects with various people in the room, but a lot of work with Gyroscope, and you know, Ron, I just wonder why Noah looks so happy in your pictures. Good move. You know, found on the idea that artists or an institution should not have to become expert craftspersons, engineers, or contractors in order to execute their visions. By keeping a diverse team of builders involved in a diverse range of projects, we remain flexible and agile as opportunities arise that require skills beyond the current capacity of our clients. We're not here to dictate, but to help unfold the possibilities of how to pursue ideas and the ultimate goal of being able to manifest them in a way that is deeply respectful of the process that all stakeholders go through. And so as Ron was pointing out, you know, there's a bunch of stages before you get to us. That's why I think I only have 2 minutes to present. But I'm going to talk about what we think of as builders, and I really had to get away from trying to get into the mindset of the process before it gets to us. When something lands on our desk, at that point, it's gone through a lot of, you know, hand-wringing and versions and even some prototyping to where we're getting it. You know, typically, you know, other people have convinced themselves it's feasible, and they've got their money, and they've got their goals, and they've got their opening date set in stone, and so then it arrives here, and we're like, okay, you know, here we go. So as ideas and conversations progress through the design development phase, and we get things sometimes they're not really completely drawn or worked out or engineered. And so we start asking ourselves some questions, and we worry about this a little bit, you know. But the bottom line is this the best version we can provide given the resources and constraints? And this is a question that we have to ask ourselves. In order to be good and sustainable, for us to be sustainable, we've got to have a few North Stars out there that we can go back to and feel good about projects even when they maybe go this way or that way, or you know, challenge us or are challenging for our clients. What we really need to shy away from as builders is, you know, some of the things that people before us have had to worry about. But I think that's really something that, you know, is just some mind melding for me. But we try to maintain a few principles that guide us. And, you know, we started off in a garage. We've been around for over 20 years now. We've had a couple hundred employees over the course of our history. And we've had to develop over time kind of some things that we rely on to guide us when we're overwhelmed or underwhelmed or, you know, confused or just, you know, challenged beyond, you know, the normal challenges. The caveat here is that we didn't get in this business to do the same thing over and over. So we open our doors to people bringing us all kinds of challenges, and with that comes a lot of risk, and with that comes like a lot of like, uh-oh, we better learn how to do that quick. But maybe he does later. But the most important thing is that I think I need to bring to this. I'm going to get into a case study here, but is about teamwork. Visionaries are great, but they need architects and engineers. Design by committee takes more time and patience, but more ideas and discussions prevent bad ideas from gaining sticking power. You know, we get into some situations where we're working with 20 people, you know, and everyone's got a say, and we've had to learn how to appreciate that because, you know, there's a lot that goes into these exhibitions, and and a lot of people really, really care about what they're doing, and that's what makes this field that we're in, you know, have some importance to us. Everyone has a perspective. Hearing them can provide the most complete picture. Community ownership fosters community conservancy. Basically, the more people that are involved, the more people that care about it, and the more people that are heard during the process is really going to grow a sense of ownership for more people. Instead of this being one person's thing, everybody just falling in line with them and then walking away from it, it's really important to us to kind of take that idea from our clients and run it through our organization and be there along the way with them on that journey, even if we're just the builders or at the tail end of the experience. We have to live with this stuff too, you know, and we want to be proud of it. But talk briefly here about, you know, how we design exhibits these days. And so from our perspective, I think digital technology has really been the thing over the course of our time that's impacted us the most significantly. In the realm of exhibit design and fabrication, computer renderings, 3D modeling, CAD/CAM drawings, 3D printing, digital photography, CNC machining, digital printing, and cloud-based application have all had a huge impact on the time and exactness in which we can perform tasks. When we got our first major robot, we were sold on the idea that it would replace 4 people, and that it would be almost error-free, and that was that's a great selling point. In practicality, it has done a marvelous job for us, and it's opened our minds to different ways to build things. But I just want to show you a quick example of us working with an artist who had an idea, and they were working, as I said earlier, you know, we're trying to help provide a service to people who are going beyond their own studio's capabilities or their own in-house capabilities. You know, this is the goal of the business, is like, look, come on in here and we'll help produce something that you couldn't produce on your own. We have an artist who has a vision for a piece. It's going to be a sculpture. It's going to go in Oakland. And they were trying to describe to us what they wanted, and it was going to be a tree based on the Oakland tree. It was going to be a large sculpture on the side of a building. And this artist was not really a public artist who did a lot of sculpture. So in working with them, we were trying to be open-minded and patient, and trying to take everything they were telling us and come up with some ways of working with them. And what ultimately we did was we finally got to the point where we said, look, just give us a seed, give us something to start with, bring us in something, and from that we can start the ball rolling. And so ultimately, they did get their hands into their work, which we were really happy about. They started putting together some clay, and this is supposed to become the canopy of the tree. And we decided that the best thing we could do with this was to take it literally. And so we got a 3D scanner, and we walked around the piece, and we took a scan of it, and we refined it. And then they were really looking for a kind of a tessellated look anyway, but they couldn't express the shape. And so when they expressed the shape through the sculpture, we were able to take it through some phases and turn it into, refine it and get it to the point where we got to the essence of what they were after. And this sculpture is actually, there's a portion of this over there that's now a prototype in the back. That's very beginning stages, and this is where we worked with the artist to say, okay, now that you've gotten this far with your process, let's put together some portion of this that you can come in and get a feel for and see if this is working for you. And they're happy with what we've got so far. The next iteration for us is going to be a full prototype that's using the finished materials, which in this case will be mirrored stainless steel and dichroic glass. And so this is what we're happy to get involved with artists and kind of, help work through these stages. And through this, there's been some of the challenges that were pointed out earlier. The location had to shift. There's been some issues with overhang on the sidewalk. And, as the building came to us and said, look, whatever it's going to be from the ground up doesn't matter to us right now. We need the thing that's going in the foundation. So we had to design a foundation and a hold for the piece without having the piece designed yet. So there's 4 bolts sticking out of the ground in Oakland waiting for this thing. They got about another 14 months ahead of them, but that had to happen then. And so this has a weight limit and it has a size and whatnot, So these are the constraints, no matter what the artist comes back with, they have to be held to 1,200 pounds, and so that's an engineering thing. So every time it changes shape, where did the weight go? Did it go up? Did it go down? Did it move to the right or left? And it's only supported by one piece. So this is the fun. One of my coworkers walked in the other day and he goes, I think we're gonna have this problem with this thing, and he was describing it to me and I was listening and he said, and then there's gonna be a problem with this other bit, and I said, is there any way we can just kind of look at this differently and consider this an opportunity? And he said, you mean a problem-opportunity? And so this is my life. Everything's a problem-opportunity. I had a few quips I wanted to make, what I lack in design schooling I make up for in bad memories. Stop the blame game, and ultimately winds up blaming the stakeholders for wanting the exhibit in the first place. And I'll be way more comfortable when we get to Q&A and I can say I don't know a lot. So, and when you choose a career in the arts, you choose a career where you have to come up with something new every single day. There's going to be some off days. Am I glad to be here? So, thanks, y'all.